Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the show. It's your host, Danny Haifong. I'm joined by military affairs and international relations expert and geopolitical analyst, Mark Sleboda. Mark, great to see you again. How are you?
Danny, thanks for having me. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be on the show. And I'm alive. How the hell are you?
I am also alive, and it is what a time to be alive because we are still going over this historic war of aggression on Iran waged by the United States and Israel. Let's get started, Mark, with this. Everyone hit the like button as you come on. Let's get started with, of course, now there's a manhunt for what the U.S. says is the remaining pilot missing from the two of the struck down F-15 fighter jet that happened within the last 24 hours. Mark, Iran is saying that the fighter jet's other pilot that is claimed to be rescued actually has not been rescued, and that is propaganda. But I wanted to pull up the terrible day, what Iran is calling Black Friday, because it wasn't just the F-15E Strike Eagle that was downed. There was also the A-10C. Iran is reporting an incredibly large number of other aircraft in an F-16 over Iraq, an F-16 that was poorly damaged and had to be downed as well. So 4 fighter jets and a bunch of other support aircraft over the last 24 hours. Mark, here is let's just begin with this Fox News report. CENTCOM is silent about this, by the way. There is no tweets. They like to tweet. Nothing's ever happened. They have not tweeted anything.
Now, the last thing I heard from CENTCOM was that all of their aircraft are accounted for.
It's all accounted for.
We know exactly where the pieces of it are in the Iranian desert.
Well, here's Fox News. Their national security correspondent had some interesting words that may speak a little more to the reality, of course, with a lot of spin, too. Here we go.
But the Israelis are...
Hold on one second. Let me remove this.
Hold off airstrikes in that area while this search and rescue takes place. There are some indications that at least one of the pilots may have survived, but we are awaiting a statement from CENTCOM, and there's a lot of information being put out right now through Iranian state channels. They obviously want to see this and present this as a win to their people. It is a great propaganda victory for them, but we don't know whether it was a mechanical failure or whether this F-15E was shot down by IRGC forces. What we can say is that there is still a danger to pilots flying over Iran, even though we've heard repeatedly from the Pentagon that they have air supremacy over Iran. There are still many surface-to-air missile systems that are still in existence, as well as Iranian ballistic missiles that we've seen. There were 3 waves of ballistic missiles fired at Israel in the last hour or so. So they still have a lethal capability. It's one of the reasons that the Strait of Hormuz is still closed. It's extremely dangerous for...
So, Mark, how is that air supremacy going? And talk about your reactions to the developments over the last 24 hours, which has CENTCOM silent, the Trump administration not silent, but not talking about this. So, your thoughts, your reactions.
Okay, so first of all, let me address the Black Friday sales thing because I'm not a person in general who is prone or sympathetic in any way to consumerism. That's simply not me. But I mean, who can resist these sales? Buy one F-15 and get an A-10 and 2 Blackhawks for free. I mean, that's quite a deal. That's an irresistible sale, I would say. So, yeah, we were told by the U.S. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I believe Tuesday, Wednesday, that the U.S. had now achieved a high degree of air superiority over Iran, and that the U.S. was beginning overland missions, right? And they were talking specifically bombers, B-52, but I think we can assume that they were also talking tactical aircraft as well. And this, it would have been a big deal if it were true, because despite everything that they've said up until now, and they've been lying, U.S. officials, Trump, everything he says is in his delusional fantasy world, so no one can take anything he says. But even U.S. military officials, right, Warbro, Hegseth, all of these, we're talking that the U.S. is just flying over Iranian airspace for the last 5 weeks, evidently. Completely unimpeded and freely and everything. And those of us who are paying attention to this conflict know that that is absolutely not true, right? So at least up until the middle of this week, the U.S., for the most part, their aircraft were staying well outside of Iranian airspace. They were firing from Iraqi airspace, from the Gulf, possibly even from the Caspian, but they were not, except for Reaper drones. They and a few Israeli drones. They were largely staying outside of Iranian airspace. A few high altitude bomber passes, dropping bunker busters, perhaps. But there's not even a whole lot of evidence of that. And then we see this this result this week, that they say now we've achieved air superiority and now we're going to be flying over Iranian airspace. Now, the reason this is important is because if the U.S. is firing from outside, U.S. and Israel firing from outside Iranian airspace, then they have to use standoff munitions. They have to use Tomahawks and they have to use JASSMs, right? Yeah, that's the primary. There's a few others, but that is what they are firing into Iran. And that's important because the U.S. only has so many of them. Their stockpiles are critically low. We're told that in the first few days of the war, the U.S. fired 650 some Tomahawks. So while some attention, at least in the alt media, has been drawn to the fact that the U.S. is critically low, U.S. and Israel are critically low of air defense interceptor missiles, they're also critically low of standoff offensive munitions. And the numbers have gotten so low. If you take a look at the number of Tomahawks fired in the last week, drop down to 0, right? Hundreds in the first days of the conflict, and it down to there. And evidently, from what we've heard, the JASSMs, an air-launched cruise missile, have also been inventories have also been brought down to near to nothing. Now, if the U.S. achieved real air superiority over Iran, that would be a problem for Iran, because then the U.S. could switch to JDAMs, which are old dumb gravity bombs with a glide kit attached, or gravity bombs themselves, and then the U.S. could bomb Iran essentially indefinitely. When Trump made claims, oh, we have an unlimited supply of weapons. Yeah, they do have an unlimited supply of old dumb gravity bombs, right? That much is true, effectively. But they don't have an unlimited supply of Tomahawks or JASSMs, or these standoff cruise missiles. So if Iran could keep them held off, then the U.S. would run out of offensive potential. But if they could make this switch, then the U.S. could comfortably bomb Iran, supposedly without fear of losing aircraft for, a long period of time, too long. But up until now, whatever claims to the contrary, for the most part, the U.S. and Israel have been restricted to standoff munitions. Now, what Dan Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, announced earlier this week was that, now we were going to start flying directly over Iranian airspace for the first time. We haven't done it before, but we're about to start doing it, and that's going to change everything.
Right.
And I was asked a question about this on my own channel on a question and answer session this week. And I said, I don't know. I keep seeing Reaper drones being shot down, right? Other things. I'm not sure that Iranian air defense is that badly deteriorated, and they have a very large supply of manpads. Russia just signed a deal with them for a very large supply of manpads. I don't know how many of those have been delivered, but I assume that they have their own as well. And even manpads can be extremely dangerous to tactical aircraft. We saw an F-18 that was hit by one earlier. So, even without air defense, mobile air defense systems or air defense placements, even a country with lots of manpads that are actively using them, unlike, say, Delcy Rodriguez's Venezuela, then they can do significant, even with that, significant threat. What's more, the Iranians have learned some air defense tricks since last June. And essentially, they started operating in quiet or ambush mode, right? They would go passive. They wouldn't turn on their systems, which does alert, the U.S. to their presence until they had signals from other radars, just probably from the Russians and the Chinese as well, that there were launches of aircraft. So that helps them hide their air defense. Evidently, reports are they're also have begun using a kind of advanced thermal detection system, a passive thermal detection system that has been successful in detecting U.S. aircraft, even stealth aircraft, we are told, that the U.S. can't detect that and can't target launchers that are using that to detect aircraft. So the U.S., we haven't had any air defense launches in this area in such a period of time. It's probably pretty safe. We've probably wiped everything out. And then they fly over it and get shot at because ambush tactics, right? That's what they've switched to. And this is, something that the Kiev regime learned handily in the conflict in Ukraine. So that is has been somewhat effective for them and is becoming very effective for the Iranians. And I said, well, let's see what happens. I think that the switch, the beginning of these overland missions is more to do to the fact with the exhaustion of their supply of Tomahawks and JASSM standoff munitions than any real achievement of air superiority. And thus to be able to continue the conflict and continuing damage to Iran, to bomb them back into the Stone Ages where they belong, that type of genocidal, and we need to say that is genocidal rhetoric. That is the textbook definition of genocidal rhetoric coming out of Trump. They're taking a big risk. That they're taking a risk about what they assume about Iranian air defense. And I said, let's see what the real condition and the real reasons for this switch are, this announcement. Let's see if U.S. aircraft start falling out of the sky. Bingo! 24 hours later, we start seeing U.S. aircraft falling out of the sky like there's no tomorrow. And these are significant losses, and they're more significant in that they occurred in such a short period of time after this announcement. And we saw this, one got shot down, and then the others came in for a search and rescue mission.
Yeah.
And got hit repeatedly as well. That's what we saw with the A-10, the Warthog, and several Black Hawk helicopters that were at least damaged. And that's significant, but because that tells us that Iran is capable of springing ambushes and has significant air defense assets left. and that is going to be a problem for the U.S. plans to bomb all of Iran's bridges and all of Iran's electrical generation and all of they started bombing Iranian universities, particularly science and technology universities. War crime, by the way. I mean, like no question. And it's quite clear that they're going after Iran's, intellectual base, their capability. They're specifically targeting scientists, engineers, this sort of thing, civilians. And they're bombing pharmaceutical companies. What the hell? Right? I mean, there is no military justification for that. That's just pure spite and, again, this intent to punish Iran for not just rolling over and playing dead to the U.S. hegemon. You can't do that if Iran has that type of air defense. Iran, I'm not an expert in the Iranian electrical grid, but from everything we heard, it's fairly decentralized and robust. You see that Russia has been bombing Ukraine's electrical system for several years now, right? And they're still at work on it. The repairs are done, but the Soviets also built with a lot of redundancies and a very robust decentralized system. And it seems that the Iranians are supposed to have something very similar, which means that's a long time and a lot of munitions. Two things that the U.S. does not have, particularly if it cannot hang out above Iranian airspace. And the same thing with bridges. Bridges are remarkably hard to destroy. We're told that the bridge in Iran that the U.S. targeted, the B-1 bridge that Trump was gloating about this week, right? The highest bridge, not only in Iran, but I believe in the Middle East. But from what I understand, it wasn't even fully completed. So that may have, and they specifically targeted it. I think partly because of that, so that they were able to do significant structural damage to it, whereas other bridges may be more resistant. Again, we've seen that in the conflict in Ukraine. I don't know about the engineering status of bridges in Iran, but I know the Soviets built bridges to last, and they can take quite a beating. You would be surprised. It takes a significant amount of munitions, often multiple serious impacts to do any type of significant structural damage, rather than superficial damage. So this is going to be a big problem for Donald Trump. If he can't bomb Iran back into the Stone Age to make them capitulate without losing large, even higher numbers of U.S. aircraft, then the only thing he has left is this Suicide Squad card of ground ops, which military analysts operating from a place of understanding military potential, the size of the forces that are being discussed and everything, say they would never do that, because it is stupid. It would be a slaughter. If you look at U.S. operations in Iraq and so forth, the U.S. build up hundreds of thousands of troops over half a year more, getting all the logistics into place and transferring the troops and everything. And with U.S. is talking max 20,000 troops here, max. If the 82nd Airborne and Special Forces and everything else are dragged in along with the Marine Expeditionary Units. Iran has a standing army of 300 and some thousand, and then another 1 point something million reservists and everything like that. This is not serious argument. But we're not dealing with sane or rational people in this administration. Not Trump, but many other people. And it seems that some people within the Pentagon that might have been somewhat more sane and rational. We had a huge purge of
You're
generals.
gone. 12,
The
12, right?
military, right? You know, just in
A
the
lot.
last week, 3 big generals, but you know, more in the weeks preceding this. You know, more
Right.
quietly. So we can't count that they are operating from a sane military standpoint. So that it looks like they really intend to go through with this ground up things. And now I'm going to speak cold blooded, realpolitik, sitting in Russia. Oh, go for it, baby! Go for it! Right? Waste all those standoff munitions. Waste all those air defense interceptors. Throw your troops into a suicide mission. Right? Russia, the oil price is through the roof. Right? The U.S. is even somewhat relaxing a few sanctions on Russia in order to just to get any money to the market. The price of fertilizer and agricultural goods is going through the roof. And what is Russia a huge provider of to the world other than oil and gas? Oh, yeah, fertilizer and agriculture. Now we're told that there are shortages of aluminum and helium because these industries are byproducts of the extraction and processing of natural gas and LNG. Oh, and what else does Russia have a huge ability to provide? Oh, yeah, aluminum and helium. And the U.S. is wasting any type of offensive munitions, air defense munitions, and if they start an actual ground operation, everything else that could theoretically be transferred to Ukraine instead. And there is no sign, none, that regime change is even on the table anymore. Right? No one is seriously talking about that. Now Trump is saying, "Oh, I never talked about regime change. That was never the intention. Never said it." You know,
or he already has it. Or he already has it.
Oh, that's the other one. Right.
Already
because
happened.
we killed a bunch of people. Right. It's a whole new regime. No, that's not the way you misunderstand the change regime. You assassinated, right? You targeted, a bunch of people, but there was a line of succession. And those people were replaced. And if anything, the people who replaced them, they're not more reasonable, or whatever. They're more hardline, right? First of all, he started talking that the president has changed. And I'm like, what is he talking about? Because Pezeshkian is still there. And if there's one that I wouldn't really miss in Iran, it's Pezeshkian, because he was half a pro-Western liberal to begin with. But anyway, he's still there. And what we saw instead was the Ayatollah Ali Khomeini, the one who was keeping Iran from developing a strategic deterrent. He's dead. And his son has replaced him. Now, his son, Mujtaba Khomeini, has worked extensively through the years with the IRGC and the Iranian security apparatus. He is much more hardline than and I would say pragmatic than his father was. Maybe less academic in the ethereal sense, the spiritual sense. Perhaps that's some descriptions of him I've heard. But you just killed his father, his wife, his kids, his grandkids, and supposedly injured him. I mean, I remember not so long ago that Warbro Hegseth was bragging about how they disfigured Mujtaba, right? Yeah, we really messed him up. His face is ugly, not more reasonable. Hardliners, and the system continues. That is the regime. One person, whatever American fantasies, we just take out this one evil dictator that we don't like, and everything, becomes, everyone suddenly becomes a compliant U.S. puppet. Like, I don't know, Delcy Rodriguez in Venezuela. Not that I'm going to name anyone, but that's not happening in Iran. There has been no regime change. So Trump has no good options. Even the Atlantic, one of the most pro U.S.-led Western global hegemony, news and commentary magazines out there had a piece out this week how Trump has no good options. They defined 4 options, and they said none of them are good. And that's where Trump is. He can't just leave and give up, because as compliant and sycophantic and just generally behind this, because it's against Iran, that the Western mainstream media is, even the Western mainstream media is kind of like, I don't think things are going the way they're supposed to, and they're definitely not.
No.
And the Hormuz Strait, this people, the peak, if there is a peak, of the effects of it's not closed, right? But the selective closure of the Strait of Hormuz, the management of the Strait of the Hormuz, the big effects of that have not yet hit the Western economies. South Asia has been pretty badly affected already. But there were still a number of oil tankers out there heading around the world. They've all hit port now. Now we're going to start to see the effects of it. They're now talking seriously, like very near future, of energy rationing in Europe, right? The first world, right? In the old parlance. So this is going to raise the political and economic pressure on the Trump administration at the very time that everything is starting to no longer being able to be hid about how bad the military situation is. Politico told us this week that the U.S. is running out of targets that the U.S. can easily hit, because everything is hidden in these massive missile cities and underground fortifications. And, we were told originally that, the U.S. wiped out 90% of Iran's missile launchers. And, some of us are like, yeah, really? I don't know. Meanwhile,
have you been on X lately? Have you been?
Yeah, I don't know. No, I mean, not even videos, right? I mean, videos viral and everything, but just the number of recorded missile launches was in the last week to 2 weeks is actually going up on a daily basis. The number of drone launches is going up, right? They consolidated and they hit their running pace, and they've got their schedule for a long conflict, and they continued to dish out the damage. So first it was 90%, then 80, then 70, and 60. Now CNN saying 50, right? And closer, we're getting closer to the real, which is probably something more like 20 that they've managed to take out with 80% remaining. Meanwhile, what we see is that it's Western air defense, that it's U.S. and Israeli air defense, that is just completely not only exhausted already in terms of interceptors, as was predicted, by nearly everyone, but just incapable. I can't tell you how many videos I've seen, real videos, of 4, 5, 6 interceptors being fired at a single Iranian ballistic missile incoming and missing them all. Ted Postel's been saying it all along. Air defense, particularly the Patriot, is a myth. It doesn't actually do anything. And that's being borne out. That is being borne out. And David's boomerang isn't performing any better. It's a very bad situation for them, militarily, economically, and this is existential for Iran. They can take a beating and keep on ticking. There is no observable cracks in, none of the ethnic minorities have successfully been activated. We haven't seen any substantial Mossad-backed insurgency like we did a few months ago. No. There's nothing. In fact, everything appears to be the exact opposite. Really around the flag effect, just like happened last year, except to an even greater extent. And I would say it's much stronger because, as the U.S. said, we're running out of targets, but we're going to bomb Iran back to the Stone Age. So now they're hitting universities, pharmaceutical companies, and of course, there's the Manab, situation, which was probably atrocious collateral damage due to AI targeting and other things. But it has led to the Iranian population, more solidly behind the Iranian government than I can remember.
Yeah. I mean, you've seen Abbas Araghchi walk in the streets multiple times during this war, and that usually can't happen if you have, as you said, Mark, an active force ready, because they're all into decapitation. So if they have an active force inside the country, Iranian officials are saying we're out here. So and it's not, and it's the exact opposite. People are ground swelling around them.
I'm not normally a big person for judging the body language and so forth of political figures and making assumptions from that, but the Iranian foreign minister Abbas Araghchi, that the SOB is as cool as a cucumber. I mean, he's like the level of coolness, coldness, and confidence, that he's showing those levels of Putin at his best, right? When he's doing interviews like that. I'm not seeing a Iranian political elite here that is in any way particularly stressed. Their plan is actually largely, I would say, going according to plan, right? Their strategy is bearing fruit, and they know it. And everything we hear from Trump, all of these insane, and I mean, let's. I'm not speaking hyperbolically or rhetorically. I mean, Trump is an unhinged, mentally deranged, psychopathic megalomaniac, as of course, is war bro Pete Hegseth, and we've long known that about Netanyahu. It's a dangerous position because the U.S., in acts of desperation, God knows, all the gods know what they could do at this point, particularly when they appear to be purging anyone from the military who is questioning any of these orders. That their options for ground ops. Did you, Danny, see the one in the Washington Post where they're talking about a plan to extract uranium, which involves flying forces into the central mountainous region of Iran under fire? Sorry, there is no fire because they've suppressed all Iranian air defense, right? And there's no drones and there's no missiles or anything like that. Right? And no one is supporting them, so they wouldn't face any organized military or anything like that. But they have to storm an underground fortified complex. And then they have to bring in excavating equipment to help bring the uranium out. And they have to construct an airport runway in the middle of Iran to then fly it out.
Yes, I saw the runway. I mean, I remember that. As if the United States builds anything very quickly, too, by the way.
let's be honest. James Bond flicks, even old Sean Connery James Bond flicks, have more realistic plots than this is. That's why from the Russian position, particularly when there's obviously no danger at this point of the Iranian of regime change in Iran, Russia's just like, go for it, bro.
Keep going. Keep going.
Keep going.
That's the
never stop your enemy when he's making a mistake.
Which is what The Economist said. I mean, they referenced Xi Jinping in their cover. They quoted Napoleon Bonaparte saying, never interrupt your enemy when it's making a mistake. And, it all reminds me, that ground operation scenario reminds me of the old Photoshop. If you have a photo of the war in Iran and you can just wipe out the Iranian military, then everything actually makes sense here. You can do all of that. But if you factor in the the fact that Iran has a military capabilities and has been hitting pretty hard, which everyone is admitting now, then this idea is an absolute disaster. But
it's this fantasy blinkered thinking that, I mean, it's just childish. I mean, it's literally puerile. We're told that Trump was told before the conflict that Iran would probably close the Strait of Hormuz, right? And not that anyone needs to be told this. I mean, everybody. I mean, the barista at the coffee shop, the guy selling me kofta and shawarma down the street knows that Iran would use their nuclear option of closing the Strait of Hormuz. But Trump chose not to believe that Iran would do that. Why? Because, well, that would make everything really inconvenient and impossible. So let's just pretend they're not going to do that. I mean, that's the type of fantasy thinking that went on inside the apples. When they say, we have no plan and we're just flying by the seat of our pants, therefore the enemy doesn't know what we're doing, right? That's not serious, right? That is, I mean, it's dangerous for the U.S. and everyone else in the world when, the world's fading hyperpower is operating without any strategy, without any real plans, at least not any that mesh with the real world that the rest of us live in.
Right. Yeah. Well, Mark, yeah, I mean, it's people like, Danny, why are you laughing? Well, have you seen what's been going on? I mean, everything that you just said, it makes for not only a bad Hollywood film, but also some comedy, but amidst all of the carnage and war crimes.
We're allowed. This is how we stay sane, people.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Mark, let me get to some of these developments that go along with what you were just outlining here. So here is Donald Trump. His only reaction, his only words so far, I mean, with regard to the Air Force Black Friday disaster for the United States, he was supposedly briefed. And then this morning, this is what we got from him. This is his next his most recent Truth Social post. Remember when I gave Iran 10 days to make a deal or open up the Hormuz Strait? Time is running out. 48 hours before all hell will rain. Rain as in like rain down on them. Glory to God. So as he's saying this,
glory be to God. Who are the crazy religious fanatics here again? Oh yeah, it's the Christian Zionists in the Trump administration.
And Bloomberg is confirming exactly what you just outlined earlier, Mark. The United States is committing to exhausting all of its JASSM-ER cruise missiles and taking whatever it can from the rest of the world where where it has stationed them and using them in this war. And then I wanted to get into as well. We were talking before the program of Iran's propaganda game, or its PR game in this war being absolutely on point, and they're just trending all over social media. Various Iranian official agencies, non-official. Here is the the Iranian embassy in Tunisia posting this meme, calling it the U.S. Chair Force in reference to all of the pilots that had to eject in the last 24 hours. So, Mark, what do you make of this? I mean, right now it sounds like the only option for the United States, if it does not concede to Iran in any degree, is to do exactly what Trump says he's going to do, which will require more of what we've seen in the last 24 hours. The U.S. going closer and closer to Iran's air defenses, or trying to invade and getting closer to whatever the hell Iran's going to unleash at them, troops, drones, missiles, whatever.
Come within it. That's the Iranian. Come closer, right?
Yeah,
that's what their InfoWar videos are saying. You're standing out there where it's hard for us to hit you. We can hit your bases and you hide in hotels, and we can hit Israel and the Gulf states. But yeah, you come closer so that we can give you back some. And that's exactly, what the situation would be. Then Iran would really be able to fight back on a much more equal footing. And it's not equal because they would be fighting from a strong defensive position with unquestioned logistics, which the U.S. would have no logistics, and a massive size of manpower and force, and the Iranians, they have been at various levels of conflict over the years. The IRGC has been heavily involved in Syria and Iraq, fighting ISIS and everything. They're not some country that hasn't seen combat in decades. That is not the situation. So they're blooded as well. I think if the U.S. put troops on the ground there, first of all, their logistics would just be a joke. Quite obviously, the U.S. would not have air superiority, and drones and missiles would rain down on them. Not in the sense of the Trump, tweet, all hell will rain down on them. Now, all hell will rain down, but that hell will consist of parts of U.S. aircraft falling to the ground. It's just madness, right? I mean, to quote Tyrion Lannister from the televised version of Game of Thrones, madness and stupidity. Right? I mean, that's what we're looking at here. And I try to be a black-pilled hard focus, but Iran has all the leverage in this position. They have done everything right, at least since the beginning, when all of their leaders decided to hang out in Khomeini's apartment or whatever it was. They got the whole leadership wiped out in the first few hours. But I don't know. It seems like their replacements are more level-headed and taking this conflict perhaps even more seriously. Maybe they're better off for it. I mean, that's a terrible thing to say, but at the very least, command and control has not been effective.
Seems like they almost maybe already were in command and control. I mean, that's it. The level of some have made note of this. Of course, I think we have also done that on this show, and is that it was very rapid, the response from Iran. I think so rapid that the United States and Israel had no idea it was going to be this rapid. I think they thought they had a few days to lay waste to whatever they wanted.
They had a fantasy version. The government was just going to completely collapse. Right. It didn't. And that is, again, that is a result of a continuing problem for the U.S., right? Whenever it's dealing with an adversarial country, the quote unquote experts, both within, the security state and in the academics, the universities, the think tanks, a Russian expert is an anti-Russian ideologue. An Iranian expert is an anti-Iranian ideologue. They look at their opponent rather than putting themselves in their opponent's shoes and trying to understand them on an objective, realist basis. They have, fantasy, anti-Russian, anti-Iranian, distorted caricature views, right? Because they're so focused on encouraging, military and other action against them, that it leads them into these situations where they believe that the Iranian government would just collapse like a house of cards, and the Iranian people would rise up in the streets and all start. What is it? I mean, it's not really blue jeans and Coca-Cola these days. I've been outside of the U.S. for a couple of decades, but whatever it is that characterizes American life on a simplistic consumer based facade now, that is what they imagine the Iranian people would do, and they sorely mistook the Iranian nation, and they made so many mistakes in their assessment and judgment of Iran politically, economically, just like they did with Russia, right? The belief that U.S. sanctions would crush Russia back in 2022, blah, blah, blah. They made the same type of mistakes in underestimating the strength and unity of the Iranian state and people, and that has led them to this disastrous situation where, I mean, Trump, of course, being Trump, could walk away, blame NATO. He's certainly made steps in this direction, right? Blame NATO. That's the reason why we failed. But we haven't failed. We achieved regime change, and we won. And they're never going to build a nuclear weapon now. Well, they weren't going to build one to begin with, at least not until now, and declare victory and try to walk away. But, then there's that whole problem now that the Strait of Hormuz would be left under Iranian control, and you can't really ignore that. You can't pretend that that's not happening, because that affects energy markets, right? that is something that even Trump can't, pretend away and declare victory and pretend that it's not in existence. So even that is it's not an option at this point, which has led credible people like Jeffrey Sachs and many others to say that this is it. The conflict in Ukraine may have stress tested U.S.-led Western global hegemony, but this could very well be the death blow of it. They overreached. They were already in a weakened position with too many hard geopolitical limits, with low numbers of offensive, defensive munitions, and other military problems, and their economic power starting to fade relative to the rest of the world. And what did they do? They went all out. They said, we're not doing very well in Ukraine, and it looks like Russia's going to win this one. What should we do? Oh, I know. Let's start a major war with Iran.
Yeah, and go out front with it too. So
they have overstretched imperially to the breaking point. I mean, this Ukraine was already a world order changing, world order shaping conflict, almost certainly in the end game. This even more so. It's, if anything, even more so at this point, because of the huge effect on global energy and thus every other market in the world. And it's really just stunning. I mean, I'm always against saying that the U.S. stumbles into anything or is dragged into anything. And they definitely weren't dragged into this. But yeah, it looks like they through their own incompetence and ignorance and hubris, they've really stumbled into this. And I'm not seeing any silver lining for them.
Yeah. That's exactly what it looks like, Mark. How about final points on this? Earlier you said you believe 20% of Iran's missiles have been possibly destroyed by the United States and Israel. Iran is saying 10%, but what they're also saying is they have years to do this. Regardless of the numbers, they're saying they have years to do this. And I want to play this Fox News report because I don't know if you've noticed, Mark, but every time Fox News now, they have people in Israel. Every time Fox News now covers what's happening with the Iran war from Israel, it gets more and more. It's looking more and more like a Mark Sleboda analysis and less like a Fox News analysis. Here is one such example.
I'm like a contagion.
And let's get
yeah. The black pill contagion. Oh, look, it's starting to affect his wardrobe. Here we go.
Straight to the breaking news that has been breaking over the last few minutes. Another alert here, another strike. And as you look into the distance over central Israel there, you can see that thick plume of smoke from an impact scene. Now, from our experience, that is not one of those smaller cluster munitions, a bomblet from those. That looks to us like that may may have been a direct missile strike, which would be one of the first we've seen in this area for quite some time. You can tell just by the thickness of the smoke there that that is much more than one of the bomblets from a cluster munition. Now, we've been under attack here in central Israel for several hours this morning. This the second or third alert that we've had. We're waiting now. We usually get word pretty quickly on the number of injuries or casualties of any sort in a strike like this, so we are awaiting word on that right now. The earlier one that you mentioned,
So, Mark, don't need to belabor the point here, but that is what these reports are looking more and more like, attempts to try to hide how bad it is getting, because certainly they're not showing everything. But
where's that air defense? Where's that Patriot? Where's that David's boomerang?
Now it's just obvious so what's going on. And so Iran is saying years. Iran is releasing Lego rap songs, and the United States and
Iran's
Israel
info
are.
war, by the way. If you have not been watching Iran's Lego videos, Lego Wars videos, and other things, you're missing out. I mean, I put them in my own videos. I mean,
I would. I would. I don't know if I could take it.
War stuff. They make U.S. propaganda look like we imagined Iranian propaganda would look like, right? Before this conflict. It's even on the info war front, they're doing extremely well. And when Western mainstream media journalists are unable to hide the panic in their voices very well, the sense of their conception of the way the world is and should work is just being turned on its head. And that's what we see. Boom, boom, Tel Aviv.
Every single night. I mean, as we speak, every time I'm on live, Mark, it's happening. Every time I go off live, it's happening. Well, the waves. Yep.
Let me just make a point here, because Israel, is, yes, they're doing very poorly, with the U.S. in this conflict with Iran, but on the side of that, they are taking advantage of the opportunity to push their genocidal agenda on two fronts. Yeah. One, they just passed this bill to allow them to hang Palestinian detainees, with Ben Gvir popping champagne over it. And they are, even the New York Times is openly talking about Israel ejecting the Shia population of southern Lebanon. They don't actually use the words ethnic cleansing, but that it is painfully obvious even from their own headlines without their use. They're saying Israel, the New York Times is reporting this, right? So the New York Times is reporting that Israel is telling the Christian and Druze population of southern Lebanon, don't hide Shias in your attics, right? Don't, we want them all driven out. Don't try to protect them. Don't try to hide them. Where have I heard that before? I don't know, people searching people's attics looking for an ethno-religious minority. Oh yeah, the
didn't learn that one in school. Might have learned that one in school, right?
Yeah, might have learned that one. Yeah, so obviously they learned a really good lesson there. I think they learned the wrong lesson, but they definitely learned a lesson there. And it's just on from a cold-blooded realpolitik position, we all know that there's no such thing as war crimes, right? Because war crimes are only something that happens to losers, right? The victors, the permanent members of the Security Council. War crimes don't exist for them. War crimes, and those sheltered by them, so they don't exist for the U.S., for Israel. They never have, and until, I don't know, that sea change in power may actually be coming, in the not so distant future now that
Yeah.
that maybe the rest of the world can actually, but we're looking at the most grievous of war crimes and crimes of humanity being conducted by Israel and facilitated by the U.S. here. And so even in the heightened geopolitical situation and focus on what's going on in Iran, we cannot ignore what the Israeli regime is doing in Palestine and in Lebanon.
No, and with that has come also, of course, we haven't even gone into Hezbollah's in this war very fiercely. Shocked me even. Well, it didn't shock me so much, but the level of response, organized response, has shocked me a bit, given what everyone else was saying. And then Yemen, the Houthis, they are also in this with possibly a card that could, if we were talking about earlier, the Strait of Hormuz and the world economic situation being totally plunged into crisis because of what the U.S. and Israel are doing, and because of Iran's ability to control the Strait of Hormuz. The Bab el-Mandeb Strait is right there for the closing, and it could very well happen soon.
Iran is never going to run out of missiles and drones because just simply, I've heard now that there are up to 36 of these fortified underground missile cities. I mean, that many. That was actually a shocking number to me. But they produce missiles and drones. They have facilities to produce them there. But even, let's forget that. On a geopolitical level, Russia and China are Iran's logistical rear right now. The Western press is just full of stories that Russia is providing drones to Israel now, right? Iran. To Iran. Iran stepped up in 2022 and provided Russia with the designs for the Shahed 136, and Russia has evolved it into the Garan 2, 3, 4, and 5 black stealth air-to-air missile launching, mine-dropping monster Wonderwaffe that it really is in the conflict in Ukraine now, and they're returning the favor and the hard-won tactics of how it can really be used to greatest effect now. And Russia's getting some payback there, and you can be sure that China will be providing anything, chemical precursor chemicals, materials, what components, anything that Iran needs as well to produce, to continue production. And it's that attrition race. Iran can produce more drones and missiles than the U.S. can produce air defense interceptors. The cost difference is huge, as just beyond the production, and those air defense interceptors don't even fucking work.
It's a bleak scenario for the bleak reality for the United States empire right now, and it's I think it's one that many people weren't expecting, right? Many people were not expecting.
Evil black-pilled laugh.
Yeah, serious. I mean, it's like all of the world is looking at this like, well, I mean, you had it coming to you, right? Like, yeah, this is how the world looks at this. It's
at least the world outside the West. Yeah,
exactly. The world,
and even
the
many in the West, right? You're out there watching. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, right? People are not happy about this. Every poll that comes out, even in the United States, Mark, every subsequent poll, it doesn't get better. Donald Trump went up in front of the entire United States for 18 minutes. He didn't even not only did he not mention the ground operation or operations that they're cockamamie planning, but he didn't even try to convince people of the United States that anything had changed beyond what he has said, either in Truth Social or in prior speeches before this. Everything was just a rehash. So that, and then that left the market's going crazy. Now Brent crude is up to 140. It's
down and up.
140. It's like, so in the public opinion on this war only gets worse, and it's only going to get, and if Americans start dying in any significant numbers, it will
Since
drop
when has the U.S.
significantly.
political elite ever cared what Americans think about foreign policy?
No, never, never.
Maybe
Not
in
unless
the Vietnam War was the last time.
right. Well, not unless American people begin to exact costs for that, and has
Who
not
are they
yet
going to
happened.
vote for? The Democrats would never. Oh, yes, they would. Never mind.
Right. They're not even launching any kind of opposition. So, Mark, maybe your final comments now on the larger geopolitical shift this is bringing up. You just mentioned Russia and China, and you might remember one of the earlier Lego videos that the Iranians put out, where they literally were Donald Trump was watching through a grate as Russian and Chinese ships were moving through the Strait of Hormuz. That's been the reality since the beginning of Iran's controlled assertion of control of the Strait of Hormuz, and the numbers are out there. Chinese stocks, Chinese imports of Iranian oil are record high. Their relationship is going quite well. Iran is exporting a huge amount of oil through the Strait of Hormuz in general. This is having and they're talking about tolls in Chinese yuan. So Chinese currency. So, I mean, this is a huge shift. What do you see as some of the larger, implications?
We're at a watershed, right? And even let's not even address the larger geoeconomic changes, right, that are resulting from all of this. There's people better positioned than me, like Richard Wolff or so on, to discuss those, but they're quite obviously happening. But let's just, if the war stopped tomorrow, let's look at the hard geopolitical limits the U.S. would now be left with coming out of this conflict, with no air defense interceptors, right? In terms, with no offensive long range strike standoff capacity coming out of this, because they've wasted all of this, right? This would take years for the U.S. to rebuild their inventories, and during that time, they could not conduct any type of major military operations against Russia or China, or even second tier countries if they wanted to. That is a hard geopolitical limit now. Trump once said that the only limitation on what he can do is his own non-existent sense of conscience. And I completely disagree, right? There are hard geopolitical limits to what the U.S. can do, and that's expressed in the state of their military munitions stockpiles and the relative strengths of their opponents' militaries and military industrial complex now. If China wanted to take Taiwan militarily tomorrow, or say a year from now, 6 months, a year from now, the U.S. couldn't in any real way stop them without resorting to nukes, and we all know where that leads. That is a hard geopolitical limit, because they have overstretched themselves to such a degree with this. I was shocked even last June when they launched this. I said, how can they do this? Their inventories of air defense interceptors and standoff munitions was already so low now. It's even more so. It's a hard geopolitical limit. The U.S. is weakened. The hegemon is weakened and enfeebled coming out of this conflict, even if it ended tomorrow, which it's not going to do, for years into the future. And if China wanted to take Taiwan militarily, they could. And they don't have to fear the U.S. like they used to. Russia's just like, they're in the driver's seat in Ukraine now. They can take whatever they want at this point, right? It may take them time and blood to do so, but they can now be so confident about the outcome Not only militarily, the lack of U.S. military, but even economically, everything is going Russia's way now as a result of this. It is such a disastrous, I don't want to say chess move by Trump, because we know Trump doesn't play chess or actually read books or anything like that. But he played a really, really bad hand the cards. And he and the U.S. hegemon is going to pay for it now and years into the future on multiple levels.
Everybody, I just want to, I'll pull up all the super chats as I make these announcements. So everybody make sure you go to the video description, and you can find Mark Sleboda's Boosty account, where he publishes all of his original works, all of his works in general, and that's where you can support him. Thanks for all of the super chats. Of course, tomorrow I'll be back on at about 1 p.m. Eastern time with Mohammed Marandi. Sunday was at April 5th. Mark, anything you want to say before we close the program?
Yeah, this guy right here has been making a video about the Iran conflict, the U.S.-Israeli illegal unprovoked war of aggression on Iran every day for the last 5 weeks. And look at him. It shows. Buy this man, this poor man, a goddamn coffee.
Yeah. My grades are only coming in harder now, Mark. All right, everybody, hit the like button as you leave. That helps continue the conversation because more new viewers will see it. The video description where you can support Mark and this channel, Patreon, Substack, and much more. See you tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Until then, bye-bye.